All right, bringing on in another episode of Football is King here on Pick Swap Media. Ryan Coyle, Nick McClay, and Matt Coates back at it again for another episode. And we're just talking the last couple of weeks. We did a lot of big picture talking like the real teams in the NFC, the Eagles, the legit threat still with all their question marks, even though they continue to win games. We talked a lot about the college football coaching carousel this week. We didn't have any firing, so nothing to really touch on there. But we hit on a lot of big picture stuff over the past few weeks. This week, we're going to take a deep dive on some games both on the NFL side and the college side. College, there's two games I really have my eyes on, both in the SEC, actually. Two teams on the verge of probably being eliminated from playoff contention with a loss, so we'll dive into those. And then NFL last week, we had a great slate. I think this week it might even be better. Bucks, Bills, Bears, Vikings, Seahawks, Rams, Chiefs, Broncos, and Eagles, Lions. 5 really, really good NFL matchups. So another big week, exciting week of football. We're into November now. It's sad to see like some of these college teams only have 2 games left, but that means the playoffs are getting here soon. And the NFL, I was just looking at the standings the other day. It's just I don't know if I remember as much parity in the league as in my entire life, with the amount of teams I could see winning the NFC, the amount of teams I could see winning the AFC. I think we're in for a fun couple months down the stretch. So, Nick, Eagles win again. How are we feeling?
Yeah, I mean, like you touched on pretty much all of it. There's still going to be a lot of chaos to happen, even though some teams, you look at their schedule, some teams only have 2 games left, majority with 3. But, there's still going to be a lot of chaos happening from the original playoff rankings. There's going to be a lot of movement. There's still a lot of ball to be played. And you touched on it in the NFL. It's kind of a week-to-week league. You never know what's going to happen in the NFL. Bills lose to the Dolphins. Panthers lose to the Saints. Like there's so many things happening these last few weeks that can really determine what goes on towards the end of the season. We're going to see a lot of teams bend and fold and break it, and there's going to be teams that step up. So there's still a lot of ball to be played, and I can't really wait to see who falls and who rises to the top.
Yeah, and Matt, I actually said that we didn't have anything in the coaching carousel, but that was just college. Your New York Giants fired their head coach. If you want to chime in on that before we get into this week.
Yeah, the stove's hot in East Rutherford. Brian Dable out. I made a video about that. It was a shame to see, but it had to happen. I mean, Brian Dable, I think he's a great offensive mind, and someone's going to get a really good offensive coordinator next year. I mean, we saw the success with Jackson Dart early on, besides, a lot of time in the blue tent, 17 total touchdowns in 7 games, and 5 straight games with rushing touchdowns. First rookie quarterback to ever do that. So it's a shame that Dable got his guy, but I mean, we had 4 straight 10-point leads in the fourth quarter that were blown this year. Like it had to happen. It's just a shame, just kind of an embarrassment, but it is what it is. It's exciting to see. One fun stat I'll have about that, and we can move on. We don't need to spend too much time talking about a 2-8 football team in the NFL in November. But shockingly, the New York Giants have not hired a defensive-minded head coach since 1983 when they hired Bill Parcells. So just a phenomenal stat to think about. And I think it's something that's going to be on John Mayer's mind as he's heading into this next cycle looking for a new head coach. You got to change something. We've had a pretty lackluster person leading the helm over the past 6 head coaches. So I think there's going to be a lot of defensive names in the mix for the Giants.
Yeah, do you have, I guess, to wrap up that, anyone that you really have your eyes on? I've seen Flores' name thrown in there. I've seen Lou Anarumo, the Colts defensive coordinator, longtime coordinator for the Bengals over the past few seasons. Any guys on your list that are really popping out as of right now? Because you guys are the first job open, so you guys really kind of have a head start on everyone else.
Yeah, I like the idea of Lou. I like the idea of Steve Spagnuolo, Chiefs DC. He has big ties to the Giants. He was actually an interim head coach for us for a little bit, longtime defensive coordinator with the Giants. Wouldn't mind to see him get a second head coaching opportunity. Antonio Pierce, I don't mind as a name to be entertained. Good point that was brought up is that Pete Carroll's not doing much better in over there in Las Vegas with the Raiders. So this might have just been a talent issue, a defensive guy, because I see us going that culture route right now. There's a lot of good offensive names out there, and I know it's going to be an attractive job with Malik Neighbors, Cam Scatterbo, and Jackson Dart already settled and likely a top 5 pick. But I'm still thinking about at least immediate gut reaction, those kind of defensive culture guys. But a lot of time to see how things play out. Because if that happens, then you got to find the right OC, and that becomes even more important. So a lot to be decided, but we got a lot of time to figure that out.
All right. Well, we will get into the games for this week. We'll start in the college side. There's two that I really have my eyes on. There's a few big matchups too. Like we have Notre Dame Pitt. That's where game day is going. Notre Dame needs to win to stay alive for their hunt. The game doesn't really matter as much for Pitt. I think it kind of still matters a little bit because if Pitt wins out, like they're probably going to be a top. They might be probably not top 4, but 5 or 6. They could definitely improve their seeding if they win out and win the ACC. South Florida Navy is a big one. South Florida jumps in to the top 25 after the Memphis loss last week. But where I want to start is in the SEC 3:30 kick on ABC. Got number 11 Oklahoma 7-2, 3-2 in the SEC at number 4 Alabama, 8-1 overall, 6-0 in the conference. Bama's a 7.5 point favorite. Over under is 45.5. And looking at Oklahoma's schedule at the beginning of the season, people were calling that maybe the toughest schedule in the country. But some of those teams that were on that schedule haven't had exactly the season that they were hoping for. So Oklahoma's schedule kind of down the stretch is much easier than was expected. So if they win this game, I think they're not in the driver's seat to make the college football playoff, but they have to be feeling good as their last 2 games are hosting hosting Missouri and hosting LSU. Missouri has been up and down with their quarterback situation. LSU, as we know, has been a dumpster fire. So Oklahoma has the chance to really put themselves in a good position to make the college football playoff. With a win this week, they lose this week, I don't think that they're going to make it there at 9-3. So we'll start with you, Matt. What are your thoughts on this matchup and any chance that Oklahoma can go to Tuscaloosa and win on Saturday?
Yeah, it's not going to be easy, but I'm never going to say there's not a chance. I think the interesting thing to consider is that last year when Oklahoma played Alabama, they kind of stomped on them. 24-3 victory. That's going to play a factor in this game. And I think that's something Kalen DeBoer has to bring up to his team. It's like, hey, this is a program with talented players, and you see what happens when you don't take them seriously. You take a hard loss. In terms of 7.5 point spread, and is there a real chance? I honestly don't see it. I don't even think Oklahoma's covering. In my eyes, if they're going to cover and have a shot to win, we need to see the John Mateer we saw pre-injury, which he hasn't quite gotten there. There's been some sparks, and we've talked about that before on this podcast, but I don't really think that's going to happen, especially when you have Ty Simpson on the other side, who's been playing like a true Heisman contender in this season. I think Alabama is going to get it done. Since that one horrible loss now to FSU to start the season, they really figured it out, hit their stride. I'm not overthinking this one. I'm taking Alabama, and I'd take them to cover as well.
Yeah, I mean, You touched on it. Alabama is trying to do exactly what Oklahoma did to them last year, is when, Alabama lost on the road to Oklahoma, giving them the 3rd loss and pretty much eliminated them from playoff contention last year. So this is a chance here for Alabama to do the same thing, get some revenge on them. And, since Oklahoma can't really afford another loss the rest of the year, I think, Alabama really has a chance to show why they deserve to be in that spot for an SEC title game with, their only loss being a non-conference to Florida State in the first week of the season. And, obviously with Texas A&M being the only team, in the SEC that's undefeated and undefeated in conference play. But you touched on it, Matt. I think this is what, can Alabama contain the legs of John Mateer, who hasn't really thrown the ball well since his injury, but he still adds that threat on the ground. And Alabama's defense, that main weakness of them is a mobile quarterback. So I think that Alabama defense, the defensive line, the linebackers, they're going to have their handful. They're going to have to step up to contain, kind of make them throw the ball and force turnovers. And another thing to watch is the Alabama offensive line. We've talked about it before. That offensive line is unbelievable, but it's going against an Oklahoma defensive line that is 3rd in the country pressure rate. And Brett Venables loves to blitz. I think they blitz at, a top 5 highest rate in the country. So while this Alabama offensive line is 4th in pass blocking against the blitz and 7th in pass blocking, in the country, they're going to have their hands full. I think this game's going to be won in the trenches. For me, I kind of trust Alabama more at home. I don't know if I love the spread, but, I think I'm just trusting Alabama to win in this spot.
Yeah, I think the reason why you got to love Alabama in this game to at least just win it outright is because Kalen DeBoer has not struggled to get his team up for the big matchups. He struggled to get them up, I think, for games against weaker teams that they were expected to kind of blow out. You look at Vanderbilt last year, you look at the Oklahoma game last year, the Florida State game week 1 this year, and then even the South Carolina game this year. They probably should have lost that game. It took some pretty crazy heroics on the stretch. This one is definitely one of the biggest games on their schedule for the entire season. And if they win this one, they're in a very, very comfortable spot to make the college football playoff. I don't think with a loss here, they're eliminated. But I also think at the same time, you win this one, I think they have a really crappy non-conference game next week. And then the Iron Bowl against Auburn, where Auburn, say what you want about them, they've been right there kind of all year. Like even like last week in the game against Vanderbilt, they lose that one in overtime. That rivalry has produced crazier things before. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Auburn kind of find a way to potentially ruin Alabama's season there. So Alabama definitely has this one as a focus game. Get this one done, and you're certainly in the driver's seat, certainly in a perfect position, I think, to make the college football playoffs. So I really like Alabama to win this one at home. But 7.5 is a lot for a desperate Oklahoma team that's playing for their season. You give me that hook, I'm probably going to take Oklahoma to cover because I think that defense could pose some problems. Probably the best defensive unit that Alabama has faced the entire season. They've got some guys over there. Brett Venables is going to be scheming up some things that Ty Simpson and that Alabama offense might not have seen. So I do like Oklahoma to keep it within the number there, but Alabama to get the win. I think this is going to be a really good football game on Saturday afternoon, though. But I will take Bama. Give me 30-23. So Oklahoma cover that 7.5. All right, second game I want to dive into. We stay in the SEC and another elimination game potentially. And I definitely think Texas has more of a chance to make the playoff if they lose this game rather than Oklahoma if they lose their game and fall to their third loss of the season, because Texas still has the opportunity to play Texas A&M in the last game of the season. They'll probably need some help from some other teams down the stretch, but Texas, they're in the latest 12-team bracket now at number 10, 7-2 overall, 4-1 in the SEC, traveling to number 5 Georgia, 8-1, 6-1 in the SEC. Georgia, this is their last game of the season in the SEC. They finish up with Georgia Tech, and they have a weak non-conference opponent next week as well. So it's an opportunity for Georgia to really feel strong going into potentially even the SEC title game. They could find their way if Alabama maybe slips up. But this is a 7:30 kick on ABC. Georgia, 6.5-point favorite here at home. Over under is 47.5. Nick, do you think Georgia has a chance to lose their second home game of the season?
I mean, you kind of touched on it. I kind of think this is pretty much, do or die right now for Texas. I know it's better, they're in a better situation than Oklahoma if they do lose, because they do face Texas A&M, and you win that game, who knows how things happen. But I think this is pretty much do or die right now for Texas. I feel like they have to kind of win out for a shot to make the playoffs. Obviously, we need to start now beating the number 5 team in the country and then beating the number 3 team in the country. So, it's going to be tough, but, for Georgia, a loss here wouldn't necessarily kill their chances at a playoff spot, but probably chances at the SEC title game that put that in jeopardy. And they would have to win out and face a tough Georgia Tech team in their season finale. So I think huge game here for SEC and both playoff implications. And the last few weeks, Arch Manning has kind of looked pretty good. He's kind of finding his groove. I think I saw since week 7, he has the 12th best passing grade in the country. But this is a Texas team that they're going to have to get the run game going. They haven't been able to get it going on the ground at all. And, facing a tough defense like Georgia, who honestly hasn't been the normal Georgia defense that we think of, but they can still stop the run. So this is going to be a huge spot, I think, for Arch if he wants to take over and show why, this team was preseason number 1, why he was preseason Heisman favorite. So, and on the other side for Georgia, I think Gunnar Stockton's played really well. He does, it helps with how good their offensive line has been playing too. But they're going against one of the best defensive lines in the entire country. Colin Simmons, who could very well be one of the best edge rushers in the country as a true sophomore. He's going to, he's going to put up some numbers. But I think this one is going to come down to which quarterback can make the most plays. 2 defenses that don't really make too many mistakes. So there's going to be, some explosive plays, I think, to win this one. I think it's going to be slow pace. I think it's going to be an under game for me. I think it's going to start out real slow, some quick 3 and outs. I'm looking at the under rather than a spread in this one, maybe even a first half under 2. Don't know how confident I am in a spread. I think I like a 2017, 21-20 type of game with Georgia coming out on top at home.
Yeah, I like that. And you took the words right out of my mouth a little bit with what I'm looking at in this game too, Nick. And I was going through the stats, and that's the same thing that jumped off the page is Arch Manning's recent performances. Past 2 games he's played, he had 346 passing yards and 326 passing yards, including a big victory against Vanderbilt, which it's so funny. Every time I say big win against Vanderbilt, it feels weird because my life experience doesn't want me to say that. But they're a good team this year, and that's no laughing matter. Additionally, that game was on November 1st. Texas has had some time to get ready for this matchup. And I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. I don't know what it is. It's kind of what you were talking about, Nick. I want that storyline. I want Arch Manning and this Texas team to prove what the hype was. Everyone, obviously, we know Arch Manning's lineage. We know why he has been so hyped up and then fell flat a little bit to start. But you know what? That's normal. That's how football players work. That's how they develop. And Arch can still grow into the player that many thought he would be, just not right away. And with this development, I'm gonna pick the upset and say that he continues this trend, continues to play well, and continues to develop this connection he's had with Ryan Wingo outside. And it seems like they're developing something special, which can be a big factor in an upset that I'm going to pick right now. But I will touch on Gunnar Stockton as well, Nick. He has been great. And what I think is worth noting, especially about him, is he's not going to turn the ball over. He only has 2 interceptions all season, and that's how you win football games. That's how you win big games like this in the SEC. Not mistake prone, but like I said, I'm playing storylines here. I want that Texas storyline. Give me a big game out of Arch and a big Texas victory.
Yeah, the thing I'm thinking about most with this matchup, and I don't think this Georgia defense is nearly as good as it was last year, but in both of those matchups last year, especially the regular season one, Texas couldn't block Georgia for anything. Georgia was all over them, and they played maybe 2 of their best defensive performances of the entire season last year against Texas. So does Kirby see something in that defensive staff on tape that they can take advantage of with Sark again? And Arch even, he came in last year and played some snaps against this Georgia team when Quinn Ewers went out with an injury, and he really struggled. So what does the Georgia defense look like? We've talked about it a bunch where they kind of have this way about them that they just find ways to win down the stretch. And in the fourth quarter, do they come to play for a full 4 quarters? Because if not, you're getting a really desperate Texas team here playing for their life, playing for their season potentially. Can they go out there and pull up the upside? I definitely think that they're capable of doing it, but Georgia has one of the best home field advantages in the country for a reason. They hadn't lost before, I think 2017. I think was the last time that they lost at home before this season against Alabama. I just don't see them slipping up twice. I'm with you, Matt. It would be a cool kind of storyline to see that happen and Texas be kind of in the mix there down the stretch, and that A&M game really mean a lot. But at the same time, I'm just going to struggle to pick against Georgia at home too. I think the bookmakers suggest that a little bit too, with that giving them all 6.5 points. I'm going to take Georgia to win it at home, but I will take Texas to cover. I think we get one of the best games of the season there on Saturday night. Give me Georgia 31-27. So Texas plus 6.5 over 47.5. Before we jump over the NFL card, a lot of great NFL games. Any matchup that you guys just kind of quick have your eyes on as a potential upset, something that could cause some chaos? We saw a handful of games last week with some upsets. UVA was one of the big ones, losing to Wake Forest. Memphis obviously lost after being the G5 representative. Any upsets you guys have your eyes on that you think could throw the college football world for a loop this week?
I don't know if I would consider taking it, but I'm really looking at that USC Iowa game with how Iowa is coming off of that Oregon game, how they could have ended up winning that game. Don't know if I'll say I think Iowa can win that game in USC, but I think that's a game to watch in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I like that one. Nothing else is catching my attention too crazy that I'm willing to put conviction in. So I'll just double down and put all my eggs in this Texas basket and see if that's a great take, or I'm going to put a clown filter on myself next week. But we'll double down on that.
I'm keeping an eye on, I know it's a hate watch for me, but Miami against NC State. NC State's got some firepower, plus 14.5. I really like them to keep it within that number because this is an NC State team that can score some points. Bailey at the quarterback spot is one of the more under-talked about performers in all of college football, I think, at the quarterback position. And we've seen Carson Beck have games where he has multiple turnovers. And if you're going to gift that NC State offense some more chances, I think that they could definitely take advantage of that. So something I'm keeping an eye on there would pretty much eliminate Miami from any chance of going to the college football playoff. So bunch of good games this week. Those were kind of the two more important ones. Want to do a deeper dive on the NFL this week, as there's 5 awesome matchups with Chiefs. Chiefs not in the playoffs currently projected, which is funny because they're the Super Bowl favorite, but every other team on this list would be in the playoffs. Or the Vikings, aren't either. But the Vikings are kind of right there in the mix too. So we'll actually start there. We'll start in the NFC North. The Bears sitting at 6-3. I think I heard that if the Bears win this week against the Vikings and the Eagles beat the Lions, the Chicago Bears will be in first place in the NFC North. Pretty wild there. But they're at 6-3, traveling to the Vikings 4-5, 1:00 on Fox. Like, what Vikings team shows up? I think they've been a very mysterious team this season as well. Vikings 3.5-point favorite, over under 48.5. Nick, what are you looking for in that matchup? And Bears potentially going to first place. Do you buy them as a team that could actually make a run in the NFC?
Yeah, I mean, with these two teams, divisional matchups with young quarterbacks that kind of are still trying to find themselves coming into it. Bears are kind of rolling, I guess. They won 6 out of their last 7, but it's kind of looked pretty nasty. I know they needed that comeback win last week, but I kind of think they keep rolling right here. I think Ben Johnson's kind of got what he wants out of Caleb the last couple of weeks, and that offensive line, a position where they needed to improve on from last season. We saw them put the money into it throughout the offseason, is really performing well. They're protecting Caleb, and the mix of DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monunga has looked really good the past couple of weeks. So, and on the other side, the Vikings, they've lost 3 of their last 4 games, and I'm just not confident in backing J.J. McCarthy right now. So I think I'm going to roll with the road underdogs here and take the Bears to continue this little, roll that they're on.
Yeah, Nick, I'm right there in line with you, and I respect the Vikings for having a nice home field advantage there in that stadium. It can get loud, but to be honest, I think it's a little disrespectful that the Bears aren't favored in this game. I think they're definitely winning. I'm not overthinking this one. Obviously, they took down my Giants last week, so I had my eyes closely on that game. And Caleb Williams has been putting up some good numbers recently with his wide receivers working against him. Olamide Zaccheaus had 4 drops last week, and the team had 6. So Caleb is getting it done without help from his best guys out there, which I just think is worth noting because his stats are improving. And just imagine once they can fully click as an offense. And you talked about it, Nick. These are 2 young quarterbacks going against each other that haven't found their stride. But I think Caleb is finding it a little bit. But the most important part of that is it looks like he's finding confidence. And we've seen it in college when he went to USC and they struggled. He seems like a guy who thrives on confidence and continued success. So I think he's feeling it with the 6 out of 7. I'm going to see him continue to roll against a very volatile Vikings team. And I think they're going to continue to get that victory. You mentioned that ground game. It seemed like they've unleashed something there in Chicago by splitting up the reps a little bit. I think Caleb is playing with confidence, and that's going to lead to a victory there.
I'm going against you guys. I'm going to take the Vikings at home in this spot. I think it's a kind of a desperation angle. And I think the Bears too, you have to win the game at the end of the day, going 6-3. That's an impressive start to the season for them. But a lot of these victories are kind of comeback victories, come from behind victories. We saw last week with the Giants. Dart goes out of the game. It's a different story. A few weeks ago against the Bengals, obviously that was a crazy game in there as well. How good really is this Bears team? Is that a legit 6-3? I'm still a little bit of a pessimist, I guess you could say, when it comes to them. I'm not a full believer, and I think a Vikings team that Brian Flores and that defense, I think maybe gets after Caleb a little bit. They're at home in this spot, desperation type of game. They lose this, they have absolutely no chance for the North, and their wild card chances are slimming down too. Because you got to look at that NFC wild card. One of the Seahawks or the Rams is going to be a wild card team for sure. You look at the NFC North, you're probably having at least 2 teams in the playoffs there. Probably, a decent chance of 3. Go down to the NFC South. It looks like that's probably just the Bucs. NFC East is probably just going to be the Eagles. But who gets that last spot? Do the Panthers get it? Do the Vikings get it? Can the NFC North get all 4 teams? That would be a pretty wild thing to see. But I think the Vikings are kind of playing for their season in this spot. You don't want to fall to 4-6, especially with this game being at home. It's a must win. I'm going to take them, but I will go with the Bears to cover. I love that the hook getting that there, the 3.5. But I do really think it's about a field goal game. So give me the Vikings to win that one to go against you guys. All right, staying in the 1 o'clock window. Two teams coming off, pretty disappointing losses. Definitely disappointing for the Bills, losing to the Dolphins last week. They're at 6-3. They continue to get talked about in the Super Bowl conversation, and I just don't see it with this team. And I feel like they get let off the leash, and they don't really get the criticism and the backlash that they should. But here they are again. They're at home as a 5.5-point favorite against the Bucs at 6-3, who the Bucs could stay healthy. I think they're as good as anyone in the league, but the Bucs have not been able to stay healthy. But it does look like Bucky Irving could be back this week. That would be a big boost. Maybe they're getting Chris Godwin back. I'm not sure. His injury situation has been pretty wild all year. But it's a pretty big opportunity for the Bills to get back on track at home here, but also for the Bucs to start building some momentum for down the stretch. So huge matchup there in Buffalo. Bills are a 5.5-point favorite, over under 48.5. Matt, who do you like in this game with both these teams coming off losses last week?
Yeah, interesting one with them both reeling off losses. And this one I'm going to keep simple. Both two good teams that I like, but with Buffalo at home, getting towards the end of the regular season, I'm going to pick them. What I will do, too, is give my flowers to Drake May. Last week, we were talking about on the podcast how he has done well this season, but it's going to be interesting to see him in a big game. Wasn't his best game, but he got a victory against a good team last week. So shout out Drake May. Travion Henderson was an absolute dog on the ground last week, really tore it up. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Bucs defense does against a good James Cook running back in Buffalo. Is that going to be a trend? Are they going to continue to struggle against the run? Something I got my eye on. And like I said, it's getting colder. It's in Buffalo. We got a team, Florida boys, coming up. I'm just going to take the easy pick here with the Bills.
Yeah, you both touched on it. They're both coming off losses. Tampa Bay obviously losing to the Patriots, and the other more surprising one in the Bills losing to Miami. So both teams looking to bounce back. I think this one's just going to be back and forth type of game, and whoever has the ball last wins the game. And, for me, you touched on it, Matt. Can James Cook bounce back after his really only bad game of the year? Can they get him back going? If they can, that does open a lot up in the passing game. And for Tampa Bay, can they get it going with Baker and Agbuka? That connection, that duo has been unbelievable. Buffalo's going to have their hands full with that. But I think I'm going to roll with you, Matt. Overall, I think I'm just going to go with the home team here. 5.5 might be a little bit for me with the tough Bucs, but I think I trust Buffalo and Josh Allen at home here in this bounce back spot.
Yeah, I really like the over in this matchup. They're 48.5. I think both these defenses are struggling a little bit right now. The Bills defense has really struggled basically the entire season. I think that's one of the main criticisms for me of why I've never fully bought in on this team. I've never thought that defense in Buffalo has been elite. And when you have a defensive head coach and Sean McDermott, that defense should be better. They have a lot of money invested on that side of the ball. They use a lot of high draft picks, a lot of high resources on the defensive side of the ball. And they've been underperforming, I think, for years now. They've always come up short in the playoffs, haven't been able to get the key stops against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I think that's really kind of the Achilles heel. Josh Allen, is at fault sometimes, but I think he can only do so much at the end of the day as well. So I don't really like this Buffalo defense, and I think that's going to be the main thing kind of holding them back from making a run at the potential Super Bowl berth. But I do really like the over in this game. I'll go with you guys with even saying the bad stuff about Buffalo there and take the home team. Another spot where it's they lose this matchup. The Patriots beat the Jets on Thursday Night Football. It's going to be a really tough uphill climb for the Bills to win the division. So I like the Bills to win. I think they're a little bit more desperate. The Bucs, you look at them, they have a little bit more breathing room in the NFC South. So give me the Bills to win, but the over. I think we get this one in the upper 50s this week. All right. I know we got Eagles-Lions on Sunday night. Obviously, we're excited for that one, but this is the game of the week in the NFL. The Seahawks at 7-2, at the Rams 7-2. You can make an argument that these are maybe even not just the best two teams in the NFC at this moment, but maybe the best two teams in the league, just based off the way they're playing and how well that they've been playing over the past month, basically. 4:05 kick on Fox. Rams getting just that standard 2.5 here at home, over under 48.5. Nick, any chance that the Seahawks can go on the road here? I saw Mike McDonald, the head coach for the Seahawks, is actually better on the road than he is at home. And, the LA Rams don't exactly have the most fierce home field advantage in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most or the game that I'm most forward to watching this week. I know, obviously, as an Eagles fan, we want to see that Eagles Lions. No, obviously, that's the game I want to watch. But other than that, this is probably the game that I'm most forward to watching. I think the two teams fighting at the top of the division and the NFL, both teams 7-2. Rams currently favored to win the division. I think I saw -120. Seattle right behind them at +130, and both teams coming off wins in which the offense put up 40 points each. So offenses are humming. Matt Stafford's playing like an MVP right now. 2,400 yards, 27 or 20, just over 2,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions. So, to me, at least Seattle has been one of the more surprising teams in the NFL. I didn't really see them performing like this heading to the year, but they have proven me wrong, and they've shown that they're just a really good football team. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been the best receiver in the game up until this point, already over 1,000 yards. No other player is in the 900. So, and also both defenses have been playing pretty well. So I think this is a tough game for me to pick. Aside, you have a 37-year-old Matt Stafford who's still slinging the rock, and on the other, you have Sam Darnold, who has really revived his career the past few seasons. I think I lean Seattle in the points. I do have a future on the Rams to win the division, so I think this might just be a fun stay away watch type of game for me. But I think I lean Seattle points.
Yeah, I like that. You hit the nail on the head, Nick. Glad you gave Matthew Stafford his flowers, because it seems like there aren't a lot of MVP talks about him, but he deserves to be in it, especially with what we have discussed recently with no one really sticking their head out and Jonathan Taylor maybe having a shot. As a result, Matthew Stafford hasn't thrown an interception since September 21st, and it is the middle of November. 20 touchdowns and no interceptions that time frame. Absolutely remarkable. And the thing Seattle is doing on offense is crazy. You mentioned it. JSN is putting up an offensive player of the year season. Sam Darnold is continuing his arc of revitalizing his career, which is just so exciting to see. Him and Baker Mayfield, the two guys down there in Carolina, figuring it out. He's really continuing it after a great year last year where some things fell flat. And so obviously people start doubting again. The one thing that stood out to me from these two teams last week is how dominant Seattle was able to win last week. Sam Darnold only threw the ball 12 times in a game where they put up 44 points. Over that game, they had 46 carries and 198 rushing yards as a team. That is pretty incredible when we were just talking about how their wide receiver one, JSN, is looking like an offensive player of the year. That fully dynamic offense, granted, it's against the Cardinals. They're not one of the greats that we're worried about this season, but I think that's pretty remarkable, the depth of that offense. With that being said, the Rams and Seahawks haven't played each other this year. This is something that I'm expecting to be a split series as we have these two games in the latter half of the year. So it's a tough one to pick, Nick. It's just like you said, really challenging. I'll stick with the home team here, but I will say I do think Seattle wins this division. I'm just going to go home and home on the way out because these are two phenomenal teams. It's really hard to pick, basically a pick 'em, but really loving what I'm seeing with that Seattle offensive dominance, but I'll take the home team in the Rams.
Yeah, this will be a really fun one to just have on as we kind of ease into go into Sunday Night Football with the Eagles and the Lions. Chiefs Broncos also a really good one. Like maybe the first time this season that we've had two really good games to look forward to during the 4:00 slate. But this is one as just a touchdown better that I'm looking my chops for. Like once I lose my 1:00 touchdown parlay, I'm placing this one. I already have it in the cards. Plus 1,800. Puka, Devontae, Kyron Williams, JSN, 18-1. I'll take that one because it seems like those guys are scoring every week left and right. So that's my official Football is King touchdown parlay of the week. The four favorites, of course, it probably won't hit, but those dudes are scoring every week. I did see Devontae didn't practice today because of like an oblique, so maybe he's out. If he's out, I probably like it more with just needing those three guys to score. But this is just going to be a fun one. Like I think any football fans, put your rooting interests aside. This is just a good game. I think Matthew Stafford certainly deserves to be in the MVP conversation, but hell, Sam Darnold too. Like if he leads his team to 14-3, he continues to play the way he has, elevating JSN's game to career highs this year. Sam Darnold's going to be having a seat at the table too. So wouldn't be surprised if we look up in a few months and this is the NFC Championship game either. Like if the Seahawks get the number one seed, that's obviously a really tough place to go and play for anybody. But it is pretty wild to think one of these teams will have to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs. So huge game for these two teams as they fight for this division, fight for home field advantage. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the home team in this one with the Rams. But you're not going to get me to bet on a side in this game just because I think it's as pure of a coin flip as you can get. I would probably just suggest betting the over and taking some touchdowns. I think we got a fun game in here. All right, last one on Sunday afternoon. Then we'll go to the night game to wrap us up. Chiefs at 5-4, out of the playoffs as of today, remain the Super Bowl favorite though. They'll be traveling to Denver, who's 8-2, 4:25 kick on CBS, and the Chiefs are a whopping 3.5-point favorite here on the road in Denver, one of the tougher places I think to play. Over under is 44.5. Listen, I'm not the biggest Broncos believer. I don't think they are a Super Bowl contender. I think that offense is still kind of pedestrian. I'm not fully bought in on Bo Nix. He's too Jekyll and Hyde for me. And it's a spot where we talked about it earlier. Kind of I think my word of the week is desperation games. Like when you look at Oklahoma and Texas, those guys are in desperation games. When you look at the Vikings, I think that's a desperation game. The Chiefs, you don't really have much room to slip up here. You're sitting here at 5-4. You lose this one, you're pretty much buried in the division. You're going to have to go get a wild card spot, and AFC wild card is a really tight race as well. So huge matchup here. I like the Chiefs to go find a way to win. I think we see a lower scoring game, like 23-17. Chiefs cover in that 3.5. I think that they proved the Broncos a little bit fraudulent this weekend, and why Vegas is still valuing this Chiefs team so high. So give me the Chiefs to go on the road here and win. Nick, you riding with that as well?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And you touched on it. Who would have thought that as of right now, the Chiefs are currently not in the playoffs and they're still the favorites to win the Super Bowl? They're 5-4, third in the AFC West behind the 8-2 Broncos and the 7-3 Chargers, but they're only plus 165 to win their division. And I think that just goes to show how much they value Patrick Mahomes and obviously the recency success bias of the Chiefs as a whole. But with all that being said, I think I'm going to roll with the Chiefs here. I just find it hard to go against Mahomes. Even if it is in Denver against a tough defense. They get, Rashee Rice back. He's been back in a full go. Kansas City coming off a bye week. Time for Andy Reid and that coaching staff to get ready. I think, the line here says something. So I think I'm going to take my chances here with Kansas City on the road. And like you said, in a desperation spot as well.
Yeah, guys, I'll make it a clean sweep. Overcomplicate it. I'll bring some stats to the Bo Nix discussion, though. I was looking at it. He has 5 games this season with under 200 passing yards. Not what you want for a quarterback that's trying to take you to the playoffs and win your division. His 4 best games here in terms of passing yards and passing out, Bengals, he had 330. Eagles, Giants, and Cowboys. Eagles are an outlier. I don't remember when that game was. I think it was earlier in the season, but those other 3 of those 4 teams are not good defenses. Straight up. Cowboys stink. Giants stink. Bengals, one of the worst we've ever seen. So this is a pretty glaring sign. And then we get into these AFC West games. I feel like they're always a little bit grimy, a little bit low scoring, like you guys both kind of alluded to. But with the way Bo Nix has been performing this season, Jekyll and Hyde, as you said, Ryan, and just Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs team, how they operate, I think this is a Chiefs victory, but I do think it's on the closer side, lower scoring game, grind it out. But I do not think Nix is going to get done.
I'll say something that might be unpopular opinion, but does Bo Nix give off like Jalen Hurts types vibes where the statistics aren't that great, but just finds ways to win games? I don't think anyone's saying that the Broncos are the best team, but they're sitting here at 8-2 and control their own destiny to get the 1 seed there in the AFC. And you said he's got how many games under 200 yards? I bet you if you look over at Jalen's numbers, they're pretty similar as well, but they're still winning games.
I mean, if you look at the stats, you can probably put some comparisons, but I think he's got to have a few more seasons under his belt with a lot more wins to kind of compare him to Jalen at this point, I think.
Yeah, even as a non-bias, I like that, Ryan. It's not something I ever thought of, but I feel like even with the way Jalen Hurts performs statistically, the eye test, it's pretty obvious his impact on the team and on the Eagles. I feel like Bo Nix is more so the stats are a reflection of his performance can be poor and it can be good. He has shown flashes and he can be a really good football player. He's dual threat. He's dynamic, but I feel like Jalen Hurts is getting it done regardless of what the number is saying. I don't know. Kind of like you said, Nick. I don't know if Bo's proved that yet.
Yeah, and like the Broncos, I just kind of had a thought of like the way that their offense looked against the Raiders, the way that we looked against the Packers, like offensive wise, like pretty similar performances, but never in my mind was I like the Broncos are going to lose this game. And I think at the same time with the Eagles, I never was like they're going to lose this game. And I don't know, interesting thing to look at. Definitely, I still definitely would take Jalen over him, but Nick's early in his career, still learning, still developing, and I think the Eagles definitely have a much better offensive arsenal in front of them. I don't know. Something to watch. Let's see how the Broncos, I think, kind of finish the season. But we'll wrap it up with Sunday Night Football. Lions at 6-3. They travel to Philly, who is after last week 7-2. 8:20 kick on NBC. Eagles only a 2.5-point favorite here, over under 47.5. Dan Campbell pretty outspoken today about how excited he is and how excited the Lions are to travel to Philadelphia this week. Basically saying like, this is what you work for, these type of games, these type of environments. He said basically some of the road games you'll go to, you have like fans waving at you and like, oh, like look who it is, blah, blah, blah. And like much different environment at the Link on Sunday night. Obviously I'm going to take the Eagles here in this spot. Just I don't think it's wise to bet against them. And I've been a huge, over the past 3 years, bet on the Lions against spread whenever, because you look at their numbers, how much better Dan Campbell is against the spread than any other team and any other coach in the league over that time. Pretty ridiculous. And they're even better coming off a loss. They're coming off a loss since 2022. I think they're now 13-0 against the spread and straight up. And last week we saw the beatdown that they put on the Commanders. I think there's a much different story this week. I think the Eagles defense right now is clicking, and I was super impressed. That was the thing I was most impressed with the victory on Monday night against the Packers. That defensive line came to play, and now they have a multitude of dudes that they can put out there. Jalen Hunt is looking like he did down the stretch last year after a slow start. Nolan Smith back in the fold now. Jalen Phillips made a great impact in his first game with the Eagles. Jalen Carter, I think, still definitely looking better. Jordan Davis has had a really good season. More of Jomo. That's a really deep and decisive defensive line that has a multitude of guys that can get after the quarterback. And Jared Goff, if he's not on time and if he's forced to play off script, that's when that Lions offense kind of goes to sham. So I think the Eagles defense right now is definitely carrying this team, but I also think that the offense can exploit some stuff by this Lions defense that I don't have a full confidence in. So I'm going to take the Eagles to win this one at home. I think we see some points too. 31-24. I'll go Eagles minus 2.5 over 47.5. Matt, thoughts on this matchup and two of the main contenders here in the NFC?
Yeah, going to be a fun game. Really, I'm kind of with you. I would love to pick against the Eagles. You guys know that, but I definitely don't think it's wise. One thing I will give to the people to watch out for in this game. Notice this last week when we were getting ready to talk about the Lions. The Lions' 3 losses this year. I'm going to read you guys some stats. Week 1 at Green Bay, their leading rusher, David Montgomery, 25 yards. Week 6 at the Chiefs, Jahmyr Gibbs, 65 yards. Week 9 versus Minnesota, David Montgomery, 40 yards. The Lions can't get the ground game going. They're not going to win a football game. And you were just talking about it. A strength of this Eagles team is that defense, especially those guys on that defensive line. So in a hostile environment with a good run-stopping team and 2 elite nose tackles, it's going to be hard for me to expect the Lions to come out and have a good game. If it was in Detroit, I might be willing to throw that upset pick out there and scream a little bit louder, but I really struggle to say it logically. I think it will still be a good game. There's a lot of playmakers on this offense in Detroit, so I think it will still be fun, but not smart to pick against the Eagles, especially not at the Link. So I expect them to win, but when you're watching, pay attention to that rushing attack for the Lions, because if the first half comes and those numbers are low, expect the same and expect a loss.
Yeah, I mean, both of you touched on it. Both teams coming off of wins here, and one looked a little better than the other. You could say Lions 22-point win over Washington, and obviously Philadelphia squeaking one out in Lambeau, and probably one of the worst football games ever watched. But Eagles defense or offense just couldn't get anything going, but that defense has looked elite from the front line. Jalen Carter, Moro Jomo, Jordan Davis in the middle to the edges. New addition, Jalen Phillips, Jalen Hunt, and then linebackers even, Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond flying everywhere. And then on the defensive backside in the secondary with Quinyon, Coop, Reed out there making plays. they're going to have their hands full with all these weapons on the offensive side of the ball for Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs, probably one of the most explosive players in the NFL right now. And the combo of power with David Montgomery, you touched on the running game. If they can get it going, Eagles are going to have their hands full. And then you have Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams on the outside, Sam Laporta up in the middle in the zone doing his things. This could really be a coin flip game, but I have to go with the Eagles here at home. I'll probably just stick with the money line here and not play around with any spreads or anything. But I'm going to trust this defense and just really hope that, the offense can get it together before Sunday night.
Yeah, I think picking against the Eagles in this spot doesn't make sense. And I think maybe if it was like 5.5, 6.5 or something like that, where you're like, all right, I could probably get some value here on the Lions potentially, sure. But this close of a spread, I think you just lean to what we think is a better and more complete team with the Eagles. So, all right, that'll wrap it up. Last week I labeled it the best week of the NFL season. I think this week might even be better. Really good games in all the windows, good balance, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock night game. Monday night, I think, is what? Cowboys, Raiders. So nothing great there, but great Sunday night game and primetime games in the NFL. I don't know how much they deliver. Monday night obviously wasn't a great one, but still found a way to get it done. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next week breaking down everything college football and NFL once again here on Pick Swap Media.